Hey guys, this is Caleb Mackey with another Life's Little Golden Nuggets. It's been a little bit, I know, but as I said in my last video, I wasn't sure after I finished up my therapy inspiration one, and then of course the Marcus Aurelius one that kind of really struck me. I didn't really have much else at that point that I was like, I'm ready to make another video. I also had some more busy things going on, but I've just had my gallbladder removed, so kind of have some free time on my hands and thought, why don't I look back through what I've done and then do another video? And so here we are today. And part of this is my continuing personal fun research project, I guess. Not as much a research project, more just a hobby. I'm just trying to read one book about every president of the United States. As we know, I did one about President Theodore Roosevelt, and I did one about President Chester Alan Arthur. Today, we're going to do one that I had never really looked at before and never really considered as a really solid life model, but this person really stuck out to me in what he said, that some of it impacts me in what I do as a therapist. Just a lot of wisdom from this man's life. And that is President John Quincy Adams. Little backstory, he was the son of the second president, John Adams, and John Adams's wife, Abigail. He was born right before the American Revolution, so as a very young boy, he experienced a lot of it growing up. He really had very strict upbringing by both of his parents. And so it did impact some of how he developed. Yes, it might kind of sound like maybe I might be starting to kind of tantalize you with the idea of, are we going into something about early attachment, and how it affects future development? Well, yeah, we're going to go into that. But I also want to say he seemed to be the type of person as well that tried to toe both lines. And all that I mean by that is, he didn't just allow his development alone to determine what he was going to do. Now, there were a lot of benefits that came with his development with being the son of John Adams. He got to travel the world. He got to learn a lot of different languages. He developed a very political language that that helped him learn how to better communicate with other foreign leaders. He became a lawyer and learned how to learn technical jargon and using words and the power of words. But there was one thing in particular that he had a struggle with that I remember reading and was like, oh, well, let's see about that. And it really does make sense about development and upbringing, as well as what do you do with it once you've learned that. So this comes from his lifelong diary. This was on the 15th of July in 1820. I went out this evening in search of conversation, an art of which I never have an adequate idea. Long as I have lived in the world, I never have thought of conversation as a school, in which something was to be learned. I never knew how to make it, to control, or to change it. I am by nature a silent animal, and my dear mother's constant lesson in childhood, that children in company should be seen and not heard, confirmed in me irrevocably in what I now deem a bad habit. So yes, that's kind of where he refers to his upbringing that really hammered this idea, especially because of how I've also read about John Adams. Maybe I'll do one about him later, but I did John Quincy first. But what I've heard about Abigail and John is they were very, very strict. They wanted such a almost perfectionistic, they had a perfectionistic standard that they really wanted all their kids to meet, which is also why most of them really did not meet that. John Quincy is probably the one that comes the closest, but even he has his own struggles here. And he even brings it up that he's like, I don't know how to just have a regular conversation with somebody. He didn't realize that it was also something like school that you could learn, not just through a book, but also through actual interactions with others. He says, conversation is an art of the highest importance and a school in which, for the business of life, More may perhaps be learnt than from books. It is indeed and must be desultory and superficial. And as a school consists more in making others talk than in talking. Therein has been and ever will be my deficiency, the talent of starting the game. A man who has that need talk but little himself. When once the ball is set in motion, it will roll, and in considering conversation as a school, I mean it as a school to learn and not to teach. So there we have it of him saying, I'm going to try to integrate both. He's not going to just allow his early development totally take away from what he can learn now. The one thing that I've learned from whether famous presidents or famous historical people, like I did about Marcus Aurelius, all these guys talked about being constant learners, consistently recognizing where you're short and where you can develop and grow better. And John Quincy Adams here is telling us that he's like, I'm not just going to let my deficiency of conversating take me away from the ability to learn it. And I really applaud that, because I tell people my specific style of therapy, we all know who've at least seen the videos, is solution-focused therapy. It doesn't focus on how your past has set you up to where you are now. Yes, I kind of recognize it as something really important to know, but once we know it, the whole question then becomes, now how are we going to learn it here? And how are we going to develop it for any future benefit or gain? So, it really matches my style there that, yes, recognizing your development does impact your learning and your ability with what you can do, whether we say like book smart, street smart, emotional intelligence, intellectual intelligence, any of those things. Those are kind of like all, as our brain typically does, it goes into the two polar areas. But I want to encourage everybody today, look for those areas where you might be a little bit deficient. Whether it's like John Quincy, learning how to conversate, whether for some it's getting down and dirty in the dirt. Maybe some people are just so afraid of making a mess that it's like, hey, life is going to be messy as well. And so try to learn and try to build yourself to be someone that no matter what comes your way, that you can face it. One way that I'm doing that is I'm going to learn how to garden. Honestly, I am not a big fan of gardening. I've never been. But the more that I've developed this idea about learning more and pursuing some of those areas that I don't do very well, it's not that I'm doing it just because I hate it and I know that it'd be good to learn, but I eventually kind of found an en route through learning, oh, some of these things would be fun to do if I tried it this way. Where instead of the normal gardening that people do, I thought, what would I want to grow? And I found out peanuts. So I thought, well, let me just try to do it that way. So doing it in a way that I want to do it, but still in an area that I'm very deficient, such as gardening. And I'm willing to give it a shot. And even today as well, I've also recognized too that it might be fun to look into collecting acorns and starting to learn how to maybe how to cook them and how to turn them into things like powders for baking and maybe even some acorn oil in the future. Very big ideas, but I've never done this before. So this is me kind of being John Quincy here, where for him it may have been learning how the art of conversation. I'm learning the art of gardening and foraging. And so I just encourage you, find whatever it is you're deficient in and start pursuing it and learning the art of it and growing from it. Don't worry about how maybe you might have learned not as well from your past. The past is not where it ends. Right now is where you decide how it ends. The story does not end in the past or now, but how you're going to make the next choice. All right, well, that's it for today, guys. Thank you so much for your time, and maybe we'll be seeing some more episodes here in the future. See ya.